We're working on involving people more in decisions that affect them with participatory budgeting and proposals such as citizens' panels to work alongside area partnerships in the council. In Govan Hill, the Thriving Places approach has focused on reaching out to all parts of what is a very diverse community and tackling language barriers. There's lots more to do, but it's an approach that I very strongly support. People shouldn't just be consulted on decisions which affect them, they should be involved in making them. A one-size-fits-all approach is never going to work with cleansing because neighbourhoods can be very different with very different types of housing and different issues. And that's exactly why we created a neighbourhood management system with dedicated council officers to work with local communities. That's led to a local cleansing plan for Govan Hill, which has been co-produced with the Community Council. And the expertise from local residents has led to increased enforcement and a better targeting of resources. We've still got a lot to do, we've absolutely got a lot to do, including education. It's not just about enforcement, though enforcement is very important. But I do firmly believe that the solutions to the issues in Govan Hill lie in Govan Hill and involving residents in designing the services they need and use. That's a model based on partnership with communities instead of a centralised service that doesn't really understand the specific issues in local areas. You do, of course, also need a reliable core service, which people haven't always had. And our manifesto sets out our plans to modernise the whole system with new ways of working, new vehicles, new or improved depots, and a greater investment in recycling, including new facilities to recycle a much wider range of plastics. That's something people have been calling for a while, so I'm really glad that we're able to commit to that. Well, I don't drive, so I use public transport all the time, and I'm old enough to have had a trans card, which then became a zone card, and that does allow you to use buses and trains and the underground, but it's a really clunky system and quite expensive depending on how many zones you actually use. So what we need is tap and cap integrated smart ticketing that allows multimodal travel. Now, tap and cap is being brought in for buses, so that's a start. But the SNP manifesto talks about creating a fully integrated transport system, including the subway, and reviewing the role of SPT, and I think that's a very necessary step, and whether we need a new and more focused body to deliver a new integrated system. And of course, as part of that, we're also working towards a publicly owned and run bus service. We've made a start with no parking zones around schools, and I'd like to see that extended to every school in Govan Hill, including Holyrood. And I also want to see the new powers to address pavement parking used to the full. For far too long in Glasgow, the car was king, but we have started to reverse that with more spaces for people and of course projects like the South City Way. There are also issues with the amount of clutter on pavements, and that can be a barrier for some. So these issues are absolutely on my radar, and they're also addressed in the SNP manifesto for Glasgow. Given that I'm the chair of the Thriving Places Board, you probably expect me to be enthusiastic, and I am. I think this is a really good strand of the locality plan. It's a template for collaborative working and genuine accountability, which is what I think people in Govanhill want to see. Govanhill is a very diverse and complex community, so that collaborative leadership, I think, is really important. It's fair to say over the past couple of years that Thriving Places and other local partners have probably been focused mainly on responding to the pandemic. But touch wood, we're in a much better place around that, and we're going to be able to be much more proactive going forward. And this document sets out how we can ensure that there is a genuine partnership and genuine accountability in place, which is what people quite rightly want to see. I think the cost of living crisis, following on from the pandemic, it's a bit like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, and it's just going to add to the trauma that many have already experienced. Now, nationally, the Scottish Government already spends around about £600 million each and every year mitigating Tory policies like the bedroom tax and creating new social benefits like the Scottish Child Payment. And here in the council, we've already invested £3 million in a crisis fund to support those hardest hit for this financial year. And if we're re-elected, we'll continue to prioritise this. And we'll also be rolling out policies like free school meals for all primary children to help families, and as well as supporting the delivery of a new national system of rent controls. So as a council, we will do everything we can, and I'm sure that the Scottish Government will continue to do everything that they can. But we do need to acknowledge that the main levers to address the underlying causes of this crisis sit with Westminster. So we'll also be doing everything we can to pressure them into acting too. And the answer is yes. The South West Govanhill Acquisition and Repair Programme was a very specific piece of work and a very successful one. It's brought over 360 homes into social ownership. We've seen over 30 private landlords kicked off the landlord register, and we now see over 90% of closes in the enhanced enforcement area with factoring in place. So this has been a huge improvement. But it's definitely not the end of it. We are in this for the long haul, and we'll continue to make funding available for people who need it. The council does have a very strong commitment to the future of Govanhill, and in fact, many of the lessons learned in Govanhill have been rolled out to other parts of the city with smaller scale acquisition programmes. I think that our traditional tenemental stock is probably the most important built heritage that we have. That would be my view anyway. What would Glasgow be without its tenements? So we know there are issues around neglect and disrepair across the city, but we've seen how these issues can be tackled in Govanhill, and they will continue to be tackled. So I can really give it an assurance about that. Our commitment here is for the long term. So my three things would be prevention, reduce unnecessary packaging and reuse and recycle wherever possible, education, and ensuring information is accessible to everybody in the community is vital. And finally, enforcement, so that people don't just think they'll get away with fly tipping or dumping rubbish in lanes.